Murray has it. He looks, throws, passes tip, and grabbed. Conley grabbed the ball. 5 seconds to go. The clock keeps going. Georgia can't stop it. Conley can't get back. He grabbed the ball. He fell to the turf. And then the Bulldogs realized that they couldn't get back to the huddle and couldn't get to the line to get one more play off.
Rebound of Norris Cole, and that'll do it. The shot clock is off. The Heat can dribble it out. The crowd rising here at American Airlines Arena in Miami. Dwayne Wade turned this game around in the second half as the Heat erase a 14-point deficit. They erase a 9-point halftime deficit, and they come away with a 102-89 win over the Nets.
A lady came out and said that her daughter had been shot by her boyfriend several times inside the residence. We went in the residence. She was taken to a local hospital where she died a short time later. When the officers arrived, when they were pulling up, they actually observed a black male who had a gun to his head, and he was talking to a couple of coaches out in the parking lot. As officers pulled up and began to park, that's when they heard the gunshot, and it appears the individual took his own life.
I guess with sports, it's always the good and the bad. And at the end, it was bad. That was Dow Global of the football game, audio, and KCTV on the tragic death of Jovan Belcher. And we're going to reminisce a little bit about him in just a minute. Tony Paige with you. We're going all the way to 2 o'clock. Casey Keefe. Sean Morass on the other side of the glass with a heavy heart, to say the least. Let's get this Saturday evening sports talk party started right about now.
Tony Paige! Sports Radio 66 and 101.9 FM. The Fan. WFAN, New York.
All righty then, and good evening, one and all. Hope you're having a good weekend. You get the football game that everybody wants to see now. Alabama and Notre Dame for the national championship. Nets put up a good fight against the Heat, but not ready yet. We got a little rundown with the show. We'll talk to Peter Swartzen at 11:05. Howard Beck in the 12 o'clock hour talking about the Nets. Paul Latino, 12 o'clock hour, talking about the Giants. And probably David Leonard of Newsday about the Mets, and David Wright in the 1 o'clock hour. But the story we heard in tragedy, the murder-suicide of Kansas City linebacker Jovan Belcher. But the story really hits close to home because Jovan was from West Babylon High School, and Sean Morass, who works the overnights, he's moved on. He's got bigger things now. He works the earlier hours, but he's sitting in the studio right now. His Kansas City Chiefs T-shirt, and you knew Jovan Belcher, Sean.
Knew him very well, Tony. It was just a tragic day. I'm just still trying to come to grasp with the whole thing. It just doesn't make sense.
You've known him for how long?
Since we were kids. I mean, 4th grade, I moved to West Babylon. Been playing, sports with him since I was a little kid. Grew up with him, the whole deal. Just known him my whole life.
And when's the last time you talked to him?
It was a couple weeks ago. He had come home on the bye week and just, text back and forth. We never got to meet up that week, and just how you been kind of deal, and that was it. Just always kept in touch.
Is this like him? I mean, he kills his girlfriend and then himself. Was he off the hook crazy? What tell me?
In situations like this, you've spent your life, you've seen crazy things happen, and you always hear the person, people who have known him say this isn't like them, and it's so cliche, but it's so true. Jovan was such a genuine, nice-hearted, funny guy. Me and him were kind of like class clowns back in high school. We always made each other laugh. He made everybody laugh. Warm-hearted, would do anything for you. Just to hear the news, and when I heard this morning, and first before you found out who it was and heard it was a Chiefs player, it was no way it could have been him. It was just unbelievable. I mean, to have to think about what was going through his head to do something like this, it's just it breaks my heart. I can't imagine what he was going through.
How'd you find out?
To be honest, this morning when I woke up, I had a call from Brian Monzo, who worked here, because he knew that I knew a player on the Chiefs and wanted to find out if I could find out the player's name. And it was quickly after that I started having text messages flood in from fellow friends, basically confirming what most of the news hadn't known, which was, in fact, that it was Jovan. And it was just, my heart sank. To be honest with you, I was very emotional all day. I could not wrap my head around it. I've been in a fog ever since.
When I heard the story and I was, you see this happen so often where I guess somebody pushes a button and somebody does something, and now there's a child with no mother or father, and any indication of? I mean, you've known him a long time. This isn't like, oh, I knew him a couple of weeks. You've known him for a long time. Did he ever show any indication that you could push the wrong button and he'd go off? Or
the only anger and anything I've ever seen out of him was just on the football field. He was always a team leader in high school. Back in high school, we had an undefeated season, first time in the school's history. He was a big part of that, but just all his anger and aggression was always ever on the football field. When it was off that, it was like a light switch, and he was the nicest guy in the world. That's what is so surreal. Nobody saw anything like this coming, and I know just from obviously reading Facebook and text messages from a bunch of friends back home. I think that's the hardest part about it all. Is just forget the suicide or whatever. What he did, and knowing Jovan, they just don't add up, and it just. Until more details emerge as far as whatever happened to push this button, I mean, nobody ever deserves to lose a life and be murdered like that. I just cannot come to grips with what Jovan was thinking and what was going through his head. It's just not him.
Talking to Sean Marass, who works the board here for us at the Fan, who knew the linebacker Jovan Belcher from West Babylon High School, who committed murder-suicide. And then the probably the most bizarre thing is in front of the coach and the general manager, He's thanking them for all he did for him because he was an undrafted, undersized linebacker out of Maine, and you're trying to talk him out of it. And it seems from what I'm reading, the cops showed up as he's getting ready to kill himself.
Yeah. Well, the worst part was that his mother. I shouldn't say the worst part. It's all horrible. His mother was in visiting this weekend, so his mother was there. I know there were reports earlier that it was her mother. It was his mother that was in. And I guess she witnessed this happen, and she had called the cops as he left. So the cops had an indication, and I guess when he showed up with the gun, a security guard had called there, and he's talking to Pioli and Romeo Cornell from what all the stories had. But just to be able to he thanks them and then turns around, takes a couple steps, and shoots himself in the head. For those guys to witness that, and now for
the game,
that's what I was going to say. For Romeo Cornell. I forget the players what they're dealing with. For Romeo Cornell to have to coach a game 24 hours after he witnesses his starting inside linebacker shoot himself in the head, how can you have that game tomorrow?
This is almost, we'll forfeit. We don't want to play. The NFL is going to make the game go on.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL, it's all about the bottom dollar. I mean, you couldn't wait one day and do that at Monday night. Remember when the Minnesota Dome collapsed and they postponed the Giant game You've had instances like this where something happens, you have to I think you need at least a day.
You give them some time to breathe a little bit.
And not only that, this took place at the facility at Arrowhead Stadium.
So the crime scene.
Right, your crime scene. Now tomorrow you're going to have fans out there drinking, having a good time, tailgating, where 24 hours later somebody killed himself.
When you chatted with him, did he ever mention the enjoyment of being a father? Did that ever come up?
Well, he was very, very proud, and I was obviously his Facebook friend too, so he was constant with the pictures with the baby Zoe. Everything, just smile on his face, holding the baby, everything like that. Just there was never a moment in time in the last few months since he had the kid where you felt and you looked at these pictures and said, something's not right with him. It just seemed like he had the world at his fingertips. He was a happy guy. It's so surreal. It does not make sense. Nothing adds up here.
I was reading one of the stories in one of the papers that the football coach who coached him at West Babylon, and part of the stories he would come back and talk to the community and talk to the team and you try to set an example.
So. Every time on his bye week, he was always back, and he was at the West Babylon High School game, and he would be in there talking to the team at the locker room. He would always be it always seemed to be a home game when he was back. Always be out there on the field talking, always be with the coaches. Al Rotacos, the coach of West Babylon. He was all about the community. He never forgot where he was from, no matter where he was. He went to college. He was a very good player at Maine, which isn't that big a school, but he would still come back. I would see him every time he'd come back, and he never forgot his roots at West Babylon to this day, and he always had some kind of sense of pride. And we, from where we're from, West Babylon's a small town on Long Island, there was a sense of pride, especially graduating with him, like if Jovan made it, we all could make it. And I know that was a big influence in my career too, in trying to do what I wanted to do. Jovan was like kind of that signal to everybody that, hey, look what he did, we can all do it too, and look towards him, because he could accomplish everything. It's just, I can't get over it.
Was he a mentor to a lot of these kids? Former.
Yes, he was somebody everybody looked up to. There was so much of a sense of pride about it. Whenever you heard West Babylon in the last few years, you could always associate it with, well, we had Jovan Belcher come out of there. Because I know in high school we had a big rivalry with North Babylon High School. It was across town. It was a big thing. And they had several big high school players the same year we did. And it was a big rivalry back and forth. And they had a couple highly touted prospects that everybody thought would go NFL bound. Neither of them did. And Jovan did. So it was always like that chip, like we're the underdogs. You know, we have this guy and he made it. And man, I'm telling you, Tony, it just does not add up. I've been in shock week the whole day.
How do you make sense of this? What do you tell people? In fact, I want to come back after the break and talk to you some more. But right now, I mean, I know you're hurting and the community's hurting, the school's hurting. How do you make sense of this? How do you put it in perspective?
I think you have to, first and foremost, I heard a lot of this, what he did, obviously, he has left a child without both its parents.
Right.
He obviously, as the story says, murdered his girlfriend. And I've seen a lot of this. I know it's terrible what he did, but it's almost like from where we come from the community, you cannot look at him as Jovan the murderer. You got to look at him as Jovan the underdog who succeeded and still remember him for what he was, because the half an hour that's going to define his life this morning is not the man that we've known for 25 years. And you have to remember the good times more than anything.
We come back. That's what I want to get, because, it's such a tragic story. And like you said, you tend to forget about the good things he did, the good side of him. Maybe he had demons we didn't know about, but he seemed to leave an imprint where there was a good man there.
Right.
So when we come back, I just want to talk a little bit about the good things, what made you laugh, what made him laugh, that type of thing, if you don't mind.
No, of course, definitely.
We'll do that in a second. Tony Paige and the family, we're going to 2 o'clock in the morning.
The sports leader, Sports Radio 66 and 101.9 FM, The Fan, WFAN, New York.
10:45 in the PM. Tony Paige back with you. We're talking to Sean Morass, who works the other side of the glass, as Steve Summers would say, and talking about the tragedy with Jovan Belcher, the Kansas City linebacker who killed his daughter's mother and killed himself at the Chiefs training camp. I mean, not camp, headquarters. Headquarters is the word I forgot. But Sean, everyone's going to try and make heads or tails of this and who don't know him. What made him laugh? What was the essence of what kind of a guy was he?
Anything. He was kind of a class clown kind of guy, arm around you, making funny faces, jokes, anything. He would be the kind of guy. I mean, obviously, I was too big of a wussy to play tackle football in the tackle football team, but he played on my flag football team a little and in the huddles. He was always the kind of guy just cracking jokes. He was just your regular guy, And even when he had made it to the NFL and he came back, he remained that guy. Nothing got to his head. There was no "I'm better than you," nothing like that. It was just he was your regular guy you could hang out with.
What did you do to make him laugh?
Well, what do I do to make everybody laugh?
You just be yourself.
Be myself, right?
What was he a prankster?
I mean, not a prankster in a bad way, but I guess silly stuff in the hallways back in high school,
right,
where any little thing, whether it was throwing an orange or something, right, down those seeing it splat, just stupid stuff we did around
right,
lunch or whatever. But it was just. Yeah, he was, again, just everything was always laughter and having a good time, but nothing was ever cruel intentions or anger. And I want to, make sure I express that.
Right.
Because a lot of people will hear, class clown, well, he was always, an instigator. No, nothing
always
like that.
Always in the dean's office or something
right,
like
no.
that.
Yeah, it was nothing like that at all.
What did he diffuse fights if there was something, or there was trouble in the halls or between teammates or anything like that, you remember?
Well, yeah, you know what? He was a peacemaker, and actually I just heard a story about a couple weeks ago when he was home on his bye week, and he was out at a local bar in Babylon, post office, and he had a friend with him who was getting into an altercation with my fiance's friend's boyfriend or whatever, and basically Jovan was the peacemaker, stepped in, separated the whole thing, and bought drinks for everybody, and after that they were getting along, having a good time. So that just gives you an idea. He was never one who wanted trouble around or anything like that, or search for a fight. He was, come on, everybody get along here, let's have a good time and just hang out.
Was he a role model?
Of course. Kids to this day look up to him in West Babylon. He's, as I said, when he comes back for the games or whatever, anybody's thought process, if you're in West Babylon, you play at that program, is, hey, anything can happen. Look at Jovan. And just, he was somebody to look up to, and why not? I know that he had, in Kansas City, run a tutoring program where he was tutoring, young children, teaching them how to read, or he was a part of it with the Chiefs, and there was videos of that posted. he was big on kids, and I remember going to his house after he made it. He had a big family, tons of little cousins running around, and they all looked up to him. And he was never a troublemaker. Anything that he did, and anything, was always the positive attitude with the kids and hanging out. And he wanted to make sure the kids, whenever he was home, the kids were such a big part of it.
Mm-hmm. Did people flock to his house because of him, just to hang out with him, or?
Well, yeah. I mean, there was a lot of that, and that was kind of the weird thing when he made it. Was a lot of us were friends with him, but at the same time, I guess even though he was his normal self, you didn't want to feel like the guy that was just flocking to him while everybody else was, or anything like that. So from that sense, there were a lot of people who maybe pulled back a little, and there were some people who maybe really didn't talk to him in high school a lot, who tried to act like they were all that. But he embraced everybody, and it wasn't that, he was great with it, He, I remember, too, when I went to his house, I think it was his second year in the NFL. He was off on the bye week, and I went there. I said hello to him. Because actually, at the time, I was in college, and I was doing a college sports radio show, and I was getting him to come on, and he was going to do, like, an interview with me just so I could have it, saved in the archive. And I had, like, my little sister with me. He invited her in like it was nothing, offering her to hang out, talking sports. It was just anybody was welcome with him.
Right.
And that was the good thing,
Let me end with this. It's horrible situation. Everybody's going to remember him for the final act.
Right.
But when people ask you today, tomorrow, 10 years ago, what was Jovan Belcher like, how do you want him remembered?
As an inspiration, more than anything. It's tragic the way his life ended and the way he took the life of somebody else. But he's an inspiration of anybody who comes from a small town or maybe doesn't come from a lot of money, and just a true story of, if you really want to do something and accomplish something in life, if you work hard enough, you can accomplish that. And that's what Jovan defined, because when he was in high school, I would say he was probably still like the third best player on the team. But you know what? He had size, he worked out, he studied, pushed himself hard, got himself through college, and guess what? He was a starting linebacker in the NFL because that's what he wanted to do, and he could accomplish that. So if he could do that, anybody could do anything they want if they put their mind to it and work hard enough.
Appreciate you sharing that with us.